Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new movie review on the channel today, and today we are going to be talking about the long-anticipated John Wick Chapter 4. And of course this film stars Keanu Reeves, Donnie Yen, Lance Reddick, and Ian McShane. And of course this is the fourth film in the John Wick franchise, and in this film John is trying to fight for his freedom. He's going after the high table, and he's trying to figure out a way that he can reclaim his freedom and just become a free man in general. That's all I'm going to say for you guys, because I don't want to give you huge spoilers here. That's what you need to know about this movie. And I want to say, before anything, I love the John Wick franchise. I have loved them ever since one came out. I've watched every single one. I own them all. They're behind me right there. I own them. I love the John Wick franchise. And this is a franchise that, in my opinion, always gets better with every installment. So I was really looking forward to this movie because I thought, if they can go better than John Wick 3, which I think is the best in the franchise, like, that would be amazing. Like, that would be incredible. And walking out of this movie, they achieved it. I have no idea. This is the best John Wick movie ever so far. Like, I am dumbfounded how good this movie is. If I was to say one thing about this movie that I think in general just describes it, and that is evolution. This movie is just the best evolution of the franchise out of all of them. Every single film knows when to up the ante and just do more with its plot, its characters, its action especially, and this movie is just full-on ballistic action the entire time with a plot that honestly makes you really care for the characters more and you really want to see them go through all this stuff, and it's just a 10 times better experience than, in my opinion, any of the other John Wick movies. Obviously, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the action. We all go to John Wick movies because we want to see some really cool fight scenes. You don't need to be kidding yourself. We all love it. And I gotta say, this movie does action so goddamn well. They all do it well, but this movie especially just has such a uniqueness to its fight scenes. Every single time John Wick starts to fight someone, or it's other people too, they feel unique. Every fight scene in this movie feels unique in the right ways, where it's still keeping what makes these fight scenes in the franchise special. Every fight scene in this movie feels super unique from one another, and that's one of the rare feats in this movie, is it keeps what makes the original fight scenes and all the other films special, so like it makes it feel close to home and makes you feel like you're watching a John Wick fight scene, but then it adds these other little elements and it infuses it into the fight scenes, and they're perfect. If that's from him just using a different weapon or a different way of how it's filmed, because I want to say too, the cinematography in this movie is fantastic, especially with the fight sequences. They're so creative in how they do certain fight sequences, and they constantly just up the ante. Like I said, they're always different, and they're always trying to push new ground, but it never comes off as like cheesy, or it never comes off as like, oh, that was a bit too much, because they're trying to center it in this world where it's mostly realistic, and yes, it is very over the top, but that's what John Wick is, and it doesn't get to a point where you kind of need to like, oh, okay, you need to suspend your disbelief like to a point where you're just like, this is just fake, and this is just a bunch of just nonsense. It doesn't come off like that, but you can still tell that they're slowly raising the ante every fight sequence, and I loved it. I gotta say, I friggin' adored it. And the big thing to do with those fight sequences too is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is perfect in this movie. It's intense when it needs to be, it's quiet when it needs to be, it goes for very much just a very in-your-face, just boom boom, like punk rock sort of feel, and it's amazing. I gotta say, it was so damn good, especially in one scene closer to the beginning in one of the Continental hotels. It was amazing. It was so good, and it just helped those fight scenes so much, and it brought so much energy to it and life, and it was just so much goddamn fun. And I do want to go back to the cinematography for 1 second. I love every single thing about the cinematography in this movie. The color palette, the way it's framed, certain sequences where it's just like they're pouring rain on them and all the lights are reflecting off the water, and it looks gorgeous. It looks so gorgeous. Every scene in this movie looks like an art piece. It really does. I absolutely love the way this movie looked, and it helps so much in those fight sequences, like I said, because it makes them feel unique, it makes them feel creative, but overall, in other scenes, you just have really friggin' good cinematography, and that never feels dull and always makes it feel like it's something grand and epic, and an art piece, like I said. I also really love the setting in this movie. It's very distinct from the other John Wick movies, where we're usually in one or two locations like Casablanca, New York City. We're usually pretty self-contained, and they're usually pretty similar to one another. But this movie goes for a very Japan-style movie, and in the setting in general, and it was wonderful. I didn't know how they would pull it off because John Wick is kind of an interesting character where they haven't really done that a whole lot before, but they really succeeded, and it just looks gorgeous. Like I said, the cinematography is gorgeous in those scenes, and it's definitely my favorite part of the movie is the first half an hour of the movie when you get a lot of that inspiration, and it's fantastic. And let's get the obvious out of the way too, the cast. The cast is golden in this movie. Keanu Reeves is the Keanu Reeves in this movie. He kicks ass and he does a really good job at it. His character doesn't say very much, but you still get what he's trying to do, and you do feel the emotion and the weight of what he's trying to do and the impact of it and why he's doing it. It's all there just like the other films. And of course, Lance Reddick and Ian McShane do a fantastic job in this movie, even though they're in the movie not for a very long time, but they're still a good part of the franchise, and it was still really nice seeing them. And a really surprising part about this movie that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I was the supporting cast. The new characters this time around slap. But my favorite 100% was Donnie Yen as Kane. Oh my god, this guy. Oh my god. When I saw that he was going to be in this movie, I was already hyped as it is, but he kicks so much ass in this movie. He is unironically my favorite part about this movie, and this is a movie with John Wick. And I preferred Kane than John Wick, which is crazy to me. I don't know what it is. I think it was just his style of fighting, as his character is blind in the film, so they have to make it very creative in the ways that he fights, but he is super deadly too. Like, they do all this creative stuff, and that's just another thing where the creative fight scenes come in. With Donnie Yen's character, they have to play on that fact that he is blind, so he has a walking cane for most of it. And then he actually puts sensors around to figure out where people are so he doesn't get sneak up on. There's so many great sequences like that with his character, and it honestly made the action feel so much more interesting with scenes with him. Another thing I really liked about this movie is the conclusion. I think this movie concludes the John Wick era, or chapter, until the next film obviously, perfectly. One of the things I'll say about the other John Wick movies that after a rewatch I'm not a huge big fan of is that they don't really change. Like, the plot really doesn't move as forward as you would think. A lot of times he gets betrayed, and there's a lot of parts where we're kind of back at square one. And I was really hoping that this movie wouldn't be that. We'd actually get an actual resolution to some of the plot points that have happened in earlier films, and we definitely do get that. It's extremely satisfying, and it was a really good end to this era of John Wick. I really honestly don't have a lot to complain about in this movie, but there is one slight nitpick that I will, I guess, kind of talk about. It's really not that big of a deal, but I did feel the first 30 minutes of this movie are a little confusing on what is actually the plot, because they don't outright say what John Wick's mission is right at the beginning. They kind of piece that together later in the film, and that's not a huge gripe, but just for that first half an hour, even though the action is fantastic and you are super entertained, you kind of don't really know what's happening. Like, there isn't a whole lot of clear, there isn't a clear route in mind, even though there is, but it's kind of surface level. So if I was to say anything, I would have hoped they would have explained the plot a little bit sooner than actually waiting 30 minutes in after a really good fight scene. But like I said, that's a really small nitpick, because I'm going to be honest, I don't have a whole lot of complaints. I don't have any actual complaints about this movie, because I honestly think this is one of the best action movies we've gotten in forever. This movie is fantastic. I highly recommend going out to watch it. It's electric. The fight scenes are phenomenal. The performances are great, especially by the supporting actors this time around. They give them a lot to do. Donnie Yen is amazing. He's my favorite part about the franchise now, I would think. And it's just a damn good action movie, and one of the best action movies I think made in the last 5 years, and that's why I'm going to give this movie a 9.5 out of 10. But with all that said, thank you for watching this video. I suggest you to please like and subscribe down below for more content on the channel coming pretty damn soon, and I'm going to see you all in the next one. See ya.